إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله الأطهار على رسول الله وآله الأطهار صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
أفلح من يصلي على محمد وآل محمد. ثاني على حب مولاتي فاطمة الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. لتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان صلوا على محمد وآل محمد بأعلى أصواتكم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ما شاء الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام. وأتوب إليه قبل البدء بالدعاء. جميعا فلنطلب الإذن من مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان. يا صاحب الزمان، يا صاحب، ما شاء الله لا تبخل بصوتك. يا صاحب الزمان، يا صاحب مولانا ائذن لنا بالدعاء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء، وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء، وخضع لها كل شيء، وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور، ما شاء الله ما شاء الله، توجهوا بهذه القلوب. يا نور، يا قدوس، يا نور، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. انشغلت بالدنيا وملذاتها اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤالا من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. أين المنادي في هذه الليلة بنداء التوحيد؟ لا إله إلا أنت. ما شاء الله بأعلى أصواتكم سبحانك. ظلمت نفسي ظلمت وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أغلى له نشرت. اللهم أعظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها. ومطالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملت في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. فكن اللهم بعزتك لي في الأحوال كلها رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيره، أسأل كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أغوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء. تجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، خالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. كيف أتيت في هذه الليلة وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا. لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري، غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، يا رب ارحم ضعف، ما شاء الله، يا رب ارحم، يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، أبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما انطوى علي قلبي من معرفتك، وليج بي لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك، هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا، وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما كذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عاد يا كريم. ما شاء الله يا كريم يا رب يا كريم، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثو يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين، يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها ضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته، أم لطول البلاء ومدته، فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك، فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولا أنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين جميعا، يا غياثا ما شاء الله، يا غياث يا غياث، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلم النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرق لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفها؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تسجن زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رباه؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقي منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبع لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك، فباليقين يقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك. لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كانت لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها جميعا وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررت وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزله أو إحسان تفضله أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي ما شاء الله يا ربي يا رب يا رب يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيدي ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي ما شاء الله ما شاء الله يا ربي أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من علي معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي لا تبخل بصوتك يا رب يا ربي ما شاء الله قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكيد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقرب منزلة منك، وأقصم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك ليجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريعا، ما شاء الله بأعلى أصواتكم، يا سريعا، يا سريع الرضا، يا سريعا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس مال الرجاء، والسلاح البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافعا، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بي ما تأهله، وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من أهله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل يا رب على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome everyone to our Dua Kumayl program series, inshallah. We'll be hosting lecture series from now on. Every Thursday night we'll be hosting a Dua Kumayl program. And we are lucky to have with us for the first 4 weeks of this new endeavor our beloved Sheikh Zuhair, who is the head of mysticism and spirituality at the Al-Mahdi Institute. After finishing his accountancy, chartered accountancy, he traveled to Syria to learn Arabic and begin his Hawza journey. He then returned to the UK to complete a master's in Islamic studies at ICAS before then moving to Qom, where he studied for 11 years. And at the same time that he was in Qom, he also done his PhD. It was a doctorate in Islamic philosophy and mysticism at the University of Exeter. He returned to the UK 3 years ago and has been actively teaching and producing Islamic content ever since. So please let's welcome our beloved scholar, Sheikh Zuhair, with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I'd first like to start by thanking the Lebanese Youth Foundation and especially Musa for inviting me here today to start a series of lectures which are an introduction to Islamic psychology. And this is a topic that has garnered a lot of interest because of the modern focus nowadays on our mindset, on our mental health, and generally psychology itself has in a way become religion. Religion seeks to show us the path to happiness and success. It seeks to guide us along the way of dealing with the problems that we face in life in a way that is beneficial to our progression and our movement. And as such, because the world has become has moved more and more away from organized religion, religious expression still comes out in terms of psychology. So what do I mean by this? There was a view that since the world is becoming more material, it is also becoming more secular. That people are less and less interested in connecting with an almighty, with an absolute truth. But over a number of years, what has become clear is that that's not the case. Many people, most people, still want to have a connection with the sublime, want to have a connection with the Almighty, but the way they're connecting is changing. Whereas society as a whole was more collective in the past, it has become more individualistic, more atomistic. People are more concerned with their nuclear family unit than perhaps with the whole of their connection with the wider society. So as human beings become more concerned with their own individual sphere, then also those questions need to be dealt with in a way that is accessible in that individual sphere. We're more likely to learn something from our phone than perhaps we are likely to learn something from a lecture per se, or a snippet that is taken out of a lecture and put into a 2-minute video. Because we digest information differently, and that is partially because of the fact that we have become more individual and less organized in the way that we digest and interact with religion. So it is not that religion has decreased. The world has not become secular. But what has happened is that the world is becoming more and more, the term they used is unchurched. It's not as organized anymore. People want to develop, but they want to develop in their own individualistic way. And this is why Islamic psychology at the moment has become a conversation. Islamic psychology in the traditional world is known as ilm al-nafs. Ilm al-nafs is the knowledge of the self or the knowledge of the soul. And ilm al-nafs is something that is not an official subject within a hawza or a traditional curriculum. It is something that a person will pick up through reading and through interacting and through finding out more about these issues. You will study ilm al-nafs in the hawza after you've completed most of your studies. This is something you will do even beyond Bahth al-Kharij level, something that you will attend out of personal interest. You can attend classes on ilm al-nafs. They are usually in two subjects. In philosophy, where you talk about the states of the soul and the connection of the soul with the body, and then also in akhlaq, the lesson where we learn how to develop an Islamic personality. So that is where we would usually find these kind of lessons. But the more practical application of those lessons is very, very informal in the Islamic world. It is to do with a student-teacher relationship or a mentor-mentee relationship, or even to the extent when we have in Islamic mysticism and Sufism, a sheikh and a student relationship. These informal relationships is how these teachings were passed on generally. So with the modern turn in Islamic psychology, one of the main things that is occurring with this is a more formalization of that process. The idea of being able to go to an Islamic psychologist or psychotherapist and receive that guided teaching that is important for a person's day-to-day life. But before I get into all of that into a lot more detail, first, I just want to give you a quick outline of this lecture series and then go on to a few definitions and then talk about how Islamic psychology fits into the Islamic sciences and also what the discussions are. Because I think the more clear we are about what we're talking about, inshallah, the better it will be. So you can see here we have a series of 4 lectures. This first lecture is going to talk about what Islamic psychology is, and then we're going to move straight on to the second extant treatise on Islamic psychology. One of the first writers on Islamic psychology was Al-Kindi. Al-Kindi wrote about depression. He actually has a treatise about depression. The type of depression he talks about is the type of depression that can be treated with therapy. So he uses cognitive behavioral therapy to talk about how to deal with depression. But when you come onto Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, he has a more nuanced approach, and we're going to look into his treatise and how he looks at some therapies that are possible through talk therapy and some other therapies that are to do with physical issues. Then in lecture 3, we're going to move on to a very practical model of how we can understand our own psychology and how we can understand other people's psychology as well with the iceberg theory of psychology and psychotherapy. And then in lecture 4, we're going to talk about this key interaction between 2 words that we hear a lot. The heart, which is the qalb, and the intellect, which is the aql. And there is a lot of confusion as to what the difference between these 2 faculties are and where they are similar. Because the Holy Quran doesn't talk about the aql. It uses the term from aqala, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, for example, yeah? Or derivatives from the verb form aqala, but it doesn't use the term aql. It uses the term qalb, right? In our hadith, this is where we find the term aql. So there is a lot of confusion of what is the aql, what is the heart, and Islamic psychologists tend to focus on the heart, but as we will see in the discussion, it is a lot more nuanced than that. Okay, so what makes something Islamic? When I'm talking about Islamic psychology, what makes something Islamic? What makes, for example, art Islamic art? What makes medicine Islamic medicine? What is the actual, if you like, basis for which we call something Islamic or we say it is not Islamic? There are a number of views. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but I'll read them out as well. So the first view is that any knowledge that is beneficial, anything that is good, is Islamic. Why is it Islamic? Because anything that is good has ultimately come from Allah. Anything that is good ultimately has a divine source. Whether it is the human being's intellect that comes up with something good, the ultimate source of the human being's intellect is Allah. Yeah? Whether it's the human being's creativity, the ultimate source of that creativity is Allah. Anything that is beneficial for mankind, its ultimate source is Allah. So, as those people who are trying to follow the path that Allah has set before us, al-hikmah dalatul mu'min. Yeah? Anything that is of wisdom is the lost property of the believer. So we can absorb that and we can say that it is Islamic. Okay? So anything positive that we see, we can trace that back to Allah and therefore claim it to be Islamic. This is the first view. The second view is that when you want to say something is Islamic, you have to derive that from the Islamic scriptural sources. If it is in Quran, if it is in Hadith, it is Islamic. If it is not in Quran, if it is not in Hadith, you can't say it's Islamic. Yeah? If we take, for example, yoga poses. Yoga poses, I haven't seen any Hadith. Maybe somebody can show me, but I haven't seen a Hadith. And I can't recall Quranic ayah as well about yoga poses. So I would not say yoga poses are Islamic. Yeah? But for view one, they would say, wait, hold up. Does it have a benefit for mankind? Perhaps, yeah. It will increase your flexibility, it will maybe help your state of mind. Then they'll say, well, then it must have a divine origin, and therefore, it will be Islamic. So you can see how there is a tension between view one and view two. Finally, the third view is that any knowledge that is produced in Muslim societies, that also contributes to Islamic knowledge. So if it is Muslims that have produced that knowledge, then it is Islamic. Now why do they say that? They say that because the Muslim doesn't do anything without a whole bunch of presuppositions. A Muslim, when they're investigating, they're uncovering the system of Allah. Yeah? When they are trying to solve a problem, they're trying to solve it for society, fi sabilillah. Right? So all things that are produced in Muslim societies can be attributed to Islam because Muslims, they use this word, are theory-laden. They have a whole bunch of theories whenever they approach something. So when they're pursuing knowledge, they have that in mind. So what are the implications of these views for Islamic psychology? So the first one, which was that anything is beneficial is Islamic, is that anything in psychology which is beneficial, Muslims have a greater claim to that. It is Islamic. So if there is a specific therapy that is useful, we should take that, and we shouldn't feel like this has come from a source that is not Islamic. We should be confident to say that if it is good, it is from Allah, and we take it to be Islamic. The second is no. We have to start from a very different starting point. If we want to know what is Islamic, we don't just absorb what is coming from everywhere. We first go back to the scriptural sources, right? We look at the scriptural sources and consult them with the questions that are at hand. You know, the questions that are in psychology, we have to try and answer them faithfully from the scriptural sources that we have from the Quran and the Hadith. And the third view is that we should draw on the Muslim intellectual heritage. So that knowledge, body of knowledge that is produced In Muslim societies, we should take that knowledge and we should base an Islamic theory of psychology from there. And the literature in Islamic psychology has accepted all three views. You'll find parts of all three views throughout the construction of what Islamic psychology is. On the one hand, Islamic psychologists are willing to accept methods and things that don't contradict with the values of Islam into a program of Islamic psychology, especially if it has to do with science. Yeah? So if there are some experiments or something like that to show how different hormones affect us, they will accept that and they will accept it as Islamic. On the other hand, there is a concerted effort to go back to the scriptural sources and to try and consult them. And thirdly, they go back to the history of how Muslims have dealt with these issues, and they take from there as well. So all of these three views are used. So here you can see the basis of what's going on in Islamic psychology and what they consider to be Islamic. So a quick definition of psychology. I'll ask you, what is psychology? Again, there are different definitions. I've just chosen one so that we can look at it. So psychology is the study of the human mind, how it works, so how the human mind works, what goes on in the mind, how things connect together, and how that might affect behavior. Okay, so what's going on in your head and how that affects how you act. It also refers to the application of knowledge which can be used to understand events. So how you frame events in your life, how you use the knowledge that you have to understand what is happening around you. So understand events, treat mental health issues, and improve education, employment, and relationships. Primarily, it studies people and looks at why they think and act like one, like a person. Psychology allows humans to understand more about how the body and mind work together. So there's an aspect of psychology that discusses how your body is affected by your mind, and vice versa, how your mind is affected by your body. Thus, this knowledge can help with decision making. So these are the things that it produces. Number one, decision making. One of the key things in life is how we make decisions, because it impacts us, it impacts our trajectories in life, and it also impacts the people around us as well. So why is psychology useful? Because it helps with decision making. Avoiding stressful situations, or of course dealing with them. We all have stress in our lives, whether it is the small things like people cutting you up in the road or taking your parking space, or whether it is bigger things. We all have those stresses in life. How do we deal with them? Sometimes the smallest stresses can cause a huge emotional breakdown for us, right? What are the strategies that we can use to deal with that stress? Time management, right? Just literally putting your life in order. Why can some people put their life in order with time management, and why can some people not do that? Is it something inherent? Is it something learnt? Many, many questions even around things like that. Setting and achieving goals, and leads, and this is the key, and leads to happy and effective living. The key goal of psychology is to make us happy. And that is also one of the key goals of religion. One of the key goals of religion is to make us happy. Happy where? Happy right here in the dunya. And of course, happy in the akhirah. Okay? Psychology focuses on the dunya, but Islamic psychology should focus on happiness not just here and there. Right? But this is the key goal of psychology. Modern psychology, however, is still developing. And in the very beginning, psychology was very antagonistic towards religion. It was considered that you can't be a psychologist and take religion seriously. Psychology tried to establish its position amongst other sciences by focusing on empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is evidence which deals with material causes and effects. And of course, the soul and life direction and worldview and God are all things that can't be measured. So because they couldn't be measured, they were considered to be outside of the remit. Yeah? A serious psychologist would not pay attention to religion. However, that has significantly changed. Now, modern psychology is much more open to religion. Not only that though, because psychology itself is a newer science, many of the clinical approaches sometimes are contradictory or tentative, rooted in certain philosophical presuppositions, and there is a lot more to unpack in psychology itself. But where we're more interested is the dialogue between psychology and religion. So like I was saying, in the beginning, there was a very antagonistic discussion, like two people who just don't get on. Yeah? On the one hand, the psychologists didn't take religion seriously, but on the other hand, Muslim scholars also were not very pro-psychology because of its encroachment on what religion was trying to do. Psychology was saying, we can make you happy without God. And of course, religion was like, that's not possible. That's something that we don't think is even possible. So it was an antagonistic relationship. But as time has moved on, psychologists have started to take religion more seriously, and religious scholars have opened themselves as well. And that is because of the debates that have occurred in things like what happiness actually is, and whether you can treat everybody in exactly the same way. So there are more deeper realizations about a value-neutral type of therapy or psychology. Rather, people have to realize, and especially psychologists and psychotherapists realize, that they bring a lot of their own subjective ideas into therapy and into, if you like, what they will help the client to achieve. Okay, so let me now give a proper, full idea of what Islamic psychology is. Islamic psychology bases its perspective on psychology drawing from the Islamic intellectual tradition. What is it trying to do? It is trying to propose an alternative framework of psychology and psychotherapy, catering to Muslim sensibilities, so things like our culture and the way Muslims are, our beliefs and our texts. So something that is authentically Islamic, because Muslims, when they want to improve their mental state, they want to do it in an authentic Islamic way. So they need a framework that is authentically Islamic. Islamic psychology refers to the study and understanding of the soul as informed by the Quran, Hadith, and the Muslim scholars. It also acknowledges the deep impact of colonialism in displacing indigenous narratives. So Muslims consider their narrative to be something that had been overridden by colonial mindsets and secular mindsets. And now what they want to do is to repropose these ideas that will be more suitable for Muslims. And they also consider this to be a better approach to well-being generally. It is open to integration and the application of modern and traditional approaches and terms. What are its sources? Quran, Hadith, the Islamic intellectual tradition, the experience of people already working in mental health. So Muslim mental health practitioners will gain a body of experience and knowledge, and so we will draw from that as well in Islamic psychology. And of course, since wisdom is the lost property of the believer, then anything that is useful that can be incorporated into the framework of Islamic psychology, then that is something that will be used. So finally, to look at some of the key concerns of Islamic psychology and psychotherapy. And I think here it will become very clear why Islamic psychology and psychotherapy is very different to secular psychology and psychotherapy. So one of the first concerns is self-awareness and the fitrah. Helping people to understand what their natural disposition is and reconnecting with that. That is something that is a very Islamic thing, yeah? Especially in the spiritual path. That is one of the first steps that we have to all go through to find the tawheed within. The next concern is to give us a map and understanding of the soul, but based on scripture. What does the Quran and Hadith tell us about who we are? Right? We want to know about the soul, because the soul is something that we can't touch. We can't look at it. But we need to understand it, and we can understand it through our scriptural sources. The next one is jihadun nafs, the combat with the self and the move towards self-improvement. And specifically, scriptural goals, things like taqwa. Taqwa is something that is not a generic quality that every person is trying to attain. It's something that Muslims are trying to attain. Taqwa. Tawakkul, ikhlas, these kind of values are specifically Islamic values. And they're not easy to attain. They are quite difficult to attain. Yeah? So actually actualizing these religio-ethical concepts is something that is a concern of Islamic psychology and psychotherapy. So you can see for normal day-to-day Muslims, this is actually a really important subject, right? Because we all have aspirations to manifesting the ideals of our scripture, things like taqwa, things like tawakkul. And if this is a subject that is supposed to facilitate that, then it is obviously an important one. The next one here, actualizing an Islamic view through cognitive behavioral therapy based on Islamic teachings. There are many things in the Islamic worldview that are refined. They are not grasped just on the first shot. Sometimes I run a workshop on Tawheed. Tawheed is our fundamental belief. But Tawheed is one of the most misunderstood concepts amongst Muslimin. We usually think of Tawheed in numerical terms, that Allah is one numerically. But that is a very surface understanding of Tawheed. Tawheed is such a concept that when Tawheed is understood, it is completely reformative. It will reform your complete mindset. Okay? So actually comprehending and understanding these views and readjusting your wiring for what the implications of that are is something that is a part of Islamic psychology. Addressing ontological anxiety, so spiritual crisis, when all of a sudden nothing makes sense anymore, right? Those are things that are supposed to be dealt with by Islamic psychology and psychotherapy. Reconciling secular lifestyles and religious life and forming a modern Islamic personality. Many times Muslimin feel like they're living two lives, life outside and Muslim life. How do you reconcile these two lives to have an authentic Islamic personality in the secular world? Holistic living concerning the health of the body, mind and soul. We want to live in a way that is good for our health, our mind and our soul as well. Not just for the dunya, so for the dunya, but not just for the dunya, but also for the akhirah as well. Okay, learning how to live that kind of lifestyle is something that is a concern of Islamic psychology and psychotherapy. specific religious related issues like scrupulous OCD, which we call in Arabic waswas. I'm sure many of you have heard and seen of what waswas is. Waswas is when somebody becomes very particular over religious obligations. So for example, they might think that every time they make wudu, that there's something that went wrong with that wudu. So they will remake wudu. And then when they remake wudu, something that was not wrong the first time is now wrong the second time, and they'll keep doing that and entering into a cycle like that. It won't be surprising that we are not the only religion that faces that problem. There have been many studies about Judaism and how in Judaism the same problem is faced. But this is also specifically Islamic in the sense that it involves specific Islamic obligations. But waswas doesn't stop at actions. Waswas, where do you think it happens most? Happens in the mind, right? It can happen with actions, but it can happen with other things as well, especially with beliefs. There's a difference between doubts and waswas, but that is a specific issue. Guilt and sin addiction. So dealing with the guilt of committing sins is one thing. Sometimes people can take it too far. And also things that are specifically sins in Islam, not necessarily problematic outside of Islam, and are addictions. This is a big one as well. Jinn possession, the evil eye, and black magic. Those are all concerns of Islamic psychology and psychotherapy. Trauma in Muslim societies. So as we know, around the world, Muslims have been through a lot and go through a lot. And there are traumas in Muslim societies, and Muslims do not want that to be cured, or they do not want help from anyone other than someone with a similar mindset. It is usually, secular powers that cause some of the problems in the Muslim societies in the first place. And then finally, religiously inspired therapy. So solutions that come from our sources, things like prayer, things like nasiha or admonition, and also a type of self-therapy as well, which is encouraged, where we reflect on our own actions and we work through our own issues and problems. So this was an introduction. Inshallah, next time we will talk about Abu Zayd al-Balkhi's treatise. Just one final thing. I have a Telegram channel, so if you would like to see more content, please join that. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Brothers and sisters, do you guys want to do Q&A? Does anyone have any questions for the Sheikh? Good? Okay. Oh, you've got one. I was going to end it.
Salam, Sheikh. Just a quick question. So basically, like Islam acknowledges like the mainstream mental health disorders like OCD, anxiety, depression, ADHD. So just, yeah, that's it. That's what I understood from you, right?
Yeah, for sure. There is a crossover. But there are other things that are not currently within the scope of secular psychology. So things like reconciling a secular and religious life. Things like jinn possession, that is absolutely not in a secular environment. Many other things like that, jihad al-nafs, again, some of the addictions that are specifically Islamic. So there are things, if you like, that the two come together in the middle for some things, and they are separate for other things as well. Yeah, because the soul, if you think about it, the soul and your mind, there's quite a lot going on in there, right? Sometimes people have a problem. let's say something happens in their life, they have a problem reconciling how Allah can do that to them. Yeah? That is something that would be more in Islamic psychotherapy than in secular psychotherapy. They'll say, yeah, well, I don't know. All right? Because we'll try and answer that. Yeah?
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna. Shaykhna, what's our purpose being on earth?
Thank you for your question. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He has not created man and humans except to worship Him. In the hadith, when they talk about this ayah, they say, except to know Him. Yeah? So worship Him doesn't mean just the ibadat. Ibadah is one form of worship. To worship Him is to know Him, to know Allah, to recognize Allah. And we also have man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu, or better still from the Quran itself, sanurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fil anfus hatta yatabayyan annahu al-haq. Yeah? So we'll show him the signs in the horizons and in ourselves until it becomes clear that he or it is the truth. Okay? So our purpose in life is to, while life unfolds in front of us, we should become conscious of the Allah that is in our life and take everything back to His worship. If we're able to do that, then we will find happy life in this world, because وَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُمْ حَيَاةً طَيِّبًا. So within this life, we'll find a very pure life, and also we'll be successful in the akhirah as well. The purpose of us being here is so that Allah can unfold His generosity and mercy. He's put us here so that He can be kind to us. He's put us here so that we can live a beautiful life. Yeah? No worries.
Yes, he's sleeping, sorry. Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, sleep. So do we have specific tools that we use in Islamic therapy that's different than secular therapy? So like CBT or other things? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, we have specific tools. CBT is key. In fact, when we look at Abu Zayd al-Balkhi's text, you'll see why Muslim psychotherapists say CBT is actually Islamic, because it originated in very early Islamic sources. But also, as you come to the different problems, so for example, if you take jinn possession is to do with something called ruqya. Ruqya is taking verses of the Holy Quran and using them in a specific way for jinn possession. So we have some methods that are similar, some methods that are different, and a lot of methods that are taken and reformed. So for example, when we look at the iceberg theory, you'll see there that we've taken a concept that has, that's Western, and made it very Islamic, such that it's no longer really Western. If you like, the sources from there, and it's different.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question is, in your opinion, why would you deem, let's say, I'm just assuming, why would you deem Islamic psychology to be more superior as an approach compared to secular psychology? Because I know a lot of Muslims who just take the regular secular approach and sort of haven't really gravitated towards Islamic psychology. So what are the benefits, in your opinion, and why is it a more superior approach?
Assalamu alaikum. So from the perspective of doing hijama, and that in connection with jinn possession, sihr, hasad, the rest of it, there's a lot of it coming from the Ahlul Sunnah in its understanding and the tools and that kind of stuff. Is there a particular reason why from the Shia tradition that we don't have enough out in the mainstream, or it's just not being spoken about as much, or is it an Indo-Pak thing, or, yeah, thanks.
Thank you both for your questions. When we're talking about the benefits of Islamic psychotherapy and psychology and whether it is superior or not to another approach, I think on the one hand it comes to how we consider the Islamic sources in being superior. So if I was to say to you, if I derived an understanding of the human being and where they're supposed to go and what practices will be useful for them from the Quran and the Hadith, some people would say that was superior than if we take that from a secular approach or our own ideas. Or, I mean, if you take, so in the secular world, specifically Zen Buddhism is one of those, if you like, religions which has been elevated quite a bit. And the reason why is because it is secular. So its practices are easily used by a secular approach. You wouldn't see, for example, prayer in a secular environment, because prayer is not something that connects with a secular mindset. If you don't believe there's anyone there, then how are you going to pray to that entity? So I think when it comes to the benefits and whether it's superior or not, it will come down to what the framework is that is surrounding that. What I find usually with Muslims is that Muslims will take something secular and internalize it within their own system of belief. So they will do meditation, but not as a secular thing. They'll do meditation as a vehicle towards their religious ideals, right? So I think even Muslims don't consider a secular approach superior. What they'll do is take a practice that is useful and internalize it and use it in their own way. So I don't know if that, yeah? Okay. And then the next question about hijama, jinn possession, and Shia literature not in the mainstream. You're absolutely right. Jinn possession is considered, and dealing with jinn possession is considered to be one of the ulum al-ghariba. Ulum al-ghariba means the occult sciences. They're not regularly discussed. There is literature, but that literature is primarily in, Muslim languages of the Muslim world, like Arabic and Farsi. It's definitely not an Indo-Pak thing, because jinn possession and stuff like that is very widespread in the Indo-Pak community, and there's a whole load of people trying to deal with it. So yeah, I think in English you have more on jinn possession and maybe the fadila of hijama and things like that, rather than it just being Shia Sunni kind of divide. Alaikum salam.
You mentioned black magic, and you mentioned the jinn. How powerful they are affected on a human being? Because we can see sometimes someone, he's a normal person, and turn to be like he's not normal anymore. So what sort of solution for this? Because I'm not sure if you find some similarity in your life, or any friend of yours has passed through this.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to jinn possession varies in its strength. It is an area which is not straightforward. Sometimes Muslims will attribute something to jinn possession when it's not anything to do with jinn. But we do believe in jinn, and we do believe in jinn possession. We do believe in black magic. It's in the Holy Quran, especially black magic, the story of Sulaiman. It's very clear that there is something called black magic. So we do believe these things. The problem is sometimes with diagnosing them and sometimes what to do about them, because there's not that many practitioners who are honest in this field as well. Because it is so unknown, unformalized, you'll find that there's unfortunately many people trying to make money in this area of dealing with jinn possession and black magic. So I certainly believe it's there, but now what to do about it when you think you've identified it is a lot more difficult. Did that answer your question? Yeah?
What does Islamic psychology have to do with a child?
With a child, thank you very much. Very good question. Is how you feel important to you as a child? Yeah, right? Is your development and how you will progress through life important to you as a child? Yeah. So because these things are still important to children, psychology also applies to children as well. And that is why psychology starts to branch out. It branches into education. So how to educate children so that they have a good state of mind. For example, I think now, how old are you? 9. So how do you feel about the 11 plus exams? Right? Medium at the moment. When you get to 10, you'll feel worse about it. All right? Now that is from the psychology of a child, how they're going to deal with a stressful situation. And the question is, should we put a child through that kind of stressful situation at that age or not? That is a question for psychology. You see? Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you for the very easy to digest introduction. It was very well. I didn't want to ask, but you mentioned it too many times not to ask. Specifically on jinn possession. From my very limited research and findings, I've yet to come across any concrete Islamic evidence on the idea and concept of a jinn possessing a human body. Can you advise on where I would find this evidence from the Ahlul Bayt or Hadith or the Quran, please?
A scriptural source. You want a scriptural source? I don't have one on the top of my head, a scriptural source. But it is something that is widespread within the Muslim world. So I think from that perspective, it's probably easier. Because even when you come with a scriptural source, you'll have to find an authentic one, which is going to be more difficult. We have, obviously, traditions about things like protecting yourself from certain undesirable forces using certain prayers and things like that. But an actual possession, I don't know. I haven't seen, yeah.
I appreciate that, but I just want to get to the core of, you said specifically you believe it exists.
Yeah.
Based on what?
I've seen it, and I've seen it being treated.
How did you conclude that was a jinn possession?
It was very, very clear. I'll talk about the details with you afterwards, but it was very clear it was a jinn possession.
Would you take one more question, and then we'll have to end it because it's been going a while. Sorry about the state of this mic. I did see your hand go up, but is there a sister that wants to? Yeah? I'm going to take this.
Okay. Yeah.
This mic is hanging out.
Assalamu alaikum. I was wondering why today's societies are becoming more individualistic and uncharted, as you said, when it comes to religion and religious practices.
This will be the last answer. Inshallah, we'll have food coming. So please stay behind. Inshallah, we will eat. And for anyone that wants to ask the Sheikh questions after the food as well, anything personal, feel free to go up to him. as long as he has time.
Thanks. So he's basically announcing open season on share. Okay, so the source of increased individualism, they have a few reasons. One of the reasons they give is that because of increased safety. Because people are safe, they have to rely less on communal ties. Because of increased, if you like, financial ability, they don't need to rely so much on their ties, cultural ties, to make it through life. So that paves the way for a more individualistic lifestyle. You can go to work, come home, and you'll be fine, right? So that plus, all the entertainment that is there and other things that can occupy your time. So if you go to the gym, then you go to work, then you come home, then you watch Netflix, you're perfectly happy in your own bubble. So these are the kind of factors that they're saying affect individualism. And then the unchurched aspect comes also from the history of religion in this country specifically and also the Western world. The rejection of Catholicism and the kind of structure of authority of the church has led people to basically move away from the church. And as they move away from the church, they still are concerned about, being happy. They're still concerned about the major questions in life. They're still concerned about the akhirah. But they just don't want to do that in a formal setting. They want to do that within that individual setting so that they also realize their spiritual goals while living their life in this society. So those are some of the factors there. Yeah.